Today on ICMDA webinars, our 204th webinar, I believe, we have Dr. Lars Ljungström speaking to us from Sweden on resourcing Ukrainian doctors, a story of hope. And I can promise you, you're in for a real treat today. So, Ukraine. Well, Ukraine is pretty much off the news reviews at the moment. We don't hear very much about it, but of course, the war is still going on after more than 2 years. And you know that ICMDA has been very much involved in that. But this story is about how soon after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the Lord put together a most unlikely combination of 5 Swedish actors in order to support doctors and patients in Ukraine with large quantities of highly needed drugs. It's an amazing story. And it's about the fact that God uses very ordinary people, which hopefully will serve as an encouragement to all of us to be ready to hear his call and to step out in faith and to take risks and then to see him acting amazing ways. Dr. Lars Ljungström has been a member of the Swedish Christian Medical Association, the KLM, since 1981. It's a fully affiliated member of ICMDA, and he now serves there as the international secretary. And for more than 30 years, he's worked as an infectious disease specialist in a 400-bed hospital in Skövde, Sweden. I'm sure I've got the pronunciation wrong for that. His special interests are sepsis, primary immunodeficiencies, and HIV. And in this connection, since 2009, so for 15 years now, he's made annual trips to a mission hospital in Mombasa in Kenya to help mainly with HIV patients. So that's his background until the Ukraine challenge came along. So Lars and his wife have 4 children and 7 grandchildren, and they belong to a Baptist church with about 150 members in Sweden. Lars, it's just such a pleasure to have you here today. I've been following this story over the last 2 years and been incredibly inspired by it, and we really look forward to hearing what you have to share with us today. Thank you, brother. Over to you.
Okay, thank you for inviting me to give this talk, and thank you everyone who has joined to listen. As you heard in Peter's introduction, I'm an infectious disease doctor, and I have a family, and I have some pictures to illustrate what I'm going to say. So I will share my slides with you with only pictures, no text, and that will illustrate what I will say. Here is most of my family. We have a tradition on Christmas Eve to go and play tennis together. Everyone is there, and it gives the little kids time to think of something else than Christmas presents. Okay, I consider myself to be a very ordinary person, like a faithful church member, living an ordinary, quiet life where dramatic things rarely happen. I became a Christian during my year as an exchange student in Pensacola, Florida in 1973-74. This was me back then. Before that, I had planned to become an architect, but when Christ came into my life, that desire changed, and I felt I wanted to become a doctor and work more directly with people in need. I also wanted to work abroad in resource-limited countries. Then I fell in love, as many do, and in 1984, I married my wife, Britt-Marie. She's a fantastic person, and we just a week ago celebrated our 40th anniversary. She, however, did not have the same desire as I have to serve God abroad. She'd rather not travel at all, and definitely not by airplane. Our first son was born in 1985 with a severe heart condition. So for many years, it wasn't possible for me to go abroad anyway. However, I still felt that I had that calling. But as you know, God's time perspective is different from ours. Abraham was 75 years old when he got his calling, and Moses was 80. And I often think of a verse in Galatians 4, chapter 4, where it says that when time was due, God sent his son. And I think much in life has to do with God's timing. And that's why I start with a little testimony about myself. So I had this calling. I wanted to serve God abroad, and for many years I could not. But then suddenly in 2008, the first opportunity opened up. A couple in our church came back from a trip to Kenya. There they had met an old friend who had just started a small missionary hospital outside Mombasa, and they needed help with the HIV patients. So they said to me, Lars, this is something for you. And I immediately felt that this was God's way for me. We went down there together the first time in January 2009, and I have traveled 12 times to Mombasa since then. This is from the HIV group at this little hospital. And each time I stay around two weeks and see some patients, give advice about treatment and whatever problems they may have. Now, during these years, so much has improved with better drugs and better laboratory resources. So they don't need me so much there anymore, at least not for the seeing patients. However, this gave me the opportunity to serve God abroad as I always felt he wanted me to do. And I still have much contact with people there, and especially one family which we support, a woman who nearly died from AIDS, a single mother with 7 children. And the oldest boy here on the right side, he is extremely talented. And today he's in a boarding school and he wants to become a doctor. And they are all believers. And it's a fantastic story. To me, it's fantastic. Okay, then in 2011, a second opportunity opened up. There was a European ICMDA meeting. I wasn't there. I think it was in Copenhagen. And then it was decided that the Christian Medical Association in Sweden should have our counterpart in Ukraine as our sister organization. I got an email address and I tried to contact them, but I got very little response. So I thought that nothing will come out of this. But then a year or two later, we found Jim Piepen, an American pediatrician who worked as a missionary in Ukraine. And he had been involved in organizing conferences for international Christian medical students. And he invited us from Sweden to come and speak in these conferences. So I was there in Ivano-Frankivsk in 2016. And this is from the town square in Ivano-Frankivsk. So remember, this is in 2016, and the guy in the picture is Valdemar Langren. He's a young Christian doctor. It's a fantastic guy. So there was already in 2016 great awareness, even in northwestern Ukraine, that Putin was waging a war in the country. And in the town square, you could see these pictures of soldiers who had given their lives fighting for Ukraine in Donetsk region. And the second conference I went to was in 2017 in Sumi. Also a fantastic conference. I think maybe 600 international students came to this conference for Christian medical students. You'd never raise so many participants in a Christian student meeting for medical students. I don't think at least. So that was fantastic. Now this was for me an introduction to Ukraine, even though still we didn't meet with any Ukrainian Christian doctors. Then in 2019, the Christian Medical Association in Ukraine, they got a new chairman, Rudy Mihovich, here with his wife and his Anita and his son, Aaron. Rudy speaks good English, which helped us a lot. And Jim Piepen helped us to connect with him. But we had only connected when the COVID pandemic came and made it impossible for us to meet in person. We did participate in some Zoom conferences. So that way we started our contact and we got to know each other a little bit. And I think this is why on the day of the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine on February 24 in 2022, Rudy sent us an email asking for help with medical equipment and medicines. My best friend since 50 years, Magnus Landgren, is a pediatrician. Here in the picture from the ICMDA World Meeting in Hyderabad in 2018. He said that we need to find people to cooperate with. So we asked around. He asked his brother, who's a politician, and through him, we got contact with the Swedish Christian member of parliament who just texted a message. He said, contact Seb, and he gave us a phone number. Seb, who we thought we had no idea, but Magnus called the phone number and someone answered and said, hello, this is Seb. And it turned out the guy was Sebastian Staxet. He's a well-known Swedish rap artist who some years ago became a Christian. Before that, he was also a heavy criminal and drug addict. He has since then become one of the most well-known evangelists in Sweden, and he has started many things, but most well-known is the rehabilitation center for young people with drug addiction, and it's called Art of Evangelism. When the war in Ukraine started, he felt God urged him to do something. And so he contacted an old friend from Poland, and together they decided to open a warehouse in Lublin where people could send equipment in for Ukraine. We decided to cooperate. Now, immediately after Rudy's letter, I came to think of one of our members in Gothenburg, a retired colleague who had worked with conflict and catastrophe medicine. after retirement, he had continued to collect and send medical equipment to different countries. I contacted him, and sure enough, he had supply of much good medical equipment that we could send right away. He also recommended a Christian man who owned a truck company. And we contacted him, and he said he could help us. So on the 3rd of March, we sent a container with much medical supply to Ukraine. Then we called Sebastian, who was still in Lublin, in Poland. And Sebastian decided to meet the truck and go with it from Lublin to Lviv. We contacted Ruby and said, Sebastian is coming. So when the truck arrived, they met on this was on Sunday, the 6th of March. And became very good friends from the first moment and have met many times since. And as we speak, Sebastian is in Ukraine with some relief products, and he's out in the war zone also. Another thing that Sebastian did very early was to put my and Magnus's phone numbers on his website. And he has more than 100,000 followers. On the 5th of March, that was a Saturday, a man called me, and he had seen our phone numbers on Sebastian's webpage and website there. And he said to me that, well, I'm not a doctor, I'm just a plumber. But I read in my local newspaper that Per Slajson, who was the CEO of a large Swedish pharmacy, he wanted to send drugs to Ukraine, but he wasn't allowed to because of the Swedish authorities. Magnus said that we have to contact Per Slajson. And I said to Magnus, the CEO of a big company, they don't reply to emails on a weekend. But I found an email address on the internet. I sent a message to him on Sunday evening, and within 15 minutes, he responded, and he was very positive and definitely wanted to cooperate with us. That felt fantastic. However, we had a huge problem. The Swedish Medical Products Agency, MPA, laws and regulations in Sweden say that neither hospitals nor pharmacies are allowed to export drugs without a special permit, and that would take at least 6 months to get. However, God has solutions to everything. And early on in March, I got sick with COVID-19 for the first time. So I had to stay at home from work for 1 week with full payment. However, I wasn't very sick, so I could use my computer and my cell phone, and started contacting the Swedish MPA. But it's a long story. The conclusion was that, okay, you will not get a permit to export drugs to Ukraine, but we will not stop you. The only thing they wanted from us was to make sure that we sent drugs that they asked for, that they really needed. So that was amazing, we thought. However, there were more problems. the Swedish Christian Medical Association had very little money to buy drugs, and neither did the Christian Medical Association in Ukraine. However, Apotea, they were willing to donate around 4 million Swedish crowns, which equals around 400,000 US dollars, so that we could get started. They would buy the drugs that we ordered at wholesale price and charge no extra cost. But they wanted us to arrange the transportation to Ukraine. We talked to Sebastian, and as you know, he has many followers. And one of them owns a transport company with high-tech trucks. And they, in turn, had friends within the business that would help finance each transport. And so from Rudy, we got the list of the drugs they needed the most. We looked at what we thought was possible to get hold of in Sweden, and then Apotea bought these drugs. Brothers Cargo did the transport to the warehouse in Lublin, and Sebastian and his and Rudy and his co-workers would send a truck to Lublin and pick up the drugs to the warehouse in Lviv. And from there, they would send drugs to the whole country, even to the war zone, and even to places where the Red Cross and other organizations don't go. The first truck with drugs from Apotea left for Ukraine on March the 14th in 2022. In February in 2023, Magnus, Sebastian, myself, and two other friends were able to accompany, maybe I lost my pictures here a little bit. We were able to accompany one of those shipments to Ukraine. First to Lublin, and this is the warehouse in Lublin, and here is Sebastian in the middle, and Magnus on his left, two other Christian friends from Sweden, and myself on the right side. And then we came to Lviv, and there we had a Zoom meeting for Apotea's owners and sponsors to show how drugs are taken care of in Lviv and how they can know that what they donate really reaches the intended goals. The CMAU has very good control of every shipment, every drug they send, where it goes, who receives it, and they always get feedback from each transport. Apotea graciously undertook responsibility for continuing to raise funds through their sponsors and customers. And this goes on to this very day. And since the start of these shipments, I'd say by the grace of God, we've been able to mediate drugs from Apotea to the CMAU in Ukraine for a net value of around $2 million US. And one unique thing is that we've been able to provide the drugs they say they need the most, not what we happen to have left over. So it's newly produced drugs, not drugs that have passed or close to passing expiry dates. Today, I know many others, and not least the ICMDA, are sending drugs and medical equipment to Ukraine using the bonded warehouse in Lublin and the infrastructure that the CMAU has for receiving and sending it to different parts of Ukraine. This is from Apothea's, well, we'll say the main building where all the shipment goes from. And this is from a picture from the warehouse in Lviv, where much medical supply and some medicine are received. And I was there in April, and I got to see a lot of new equipment that has been provided by ICMDA in England. You can see many of these are marked so that it's obviously help donating them. Much comes through the NHS in England. I think it's fantastic. Then about a year ago, a Ukrainian doctor in London got the idea to provide medical backpacks with advanced equipment for emergency treatment of injured soldiers. My friend Magnus, he went to London, this was last June, to help pack the first set of medical backpacks. As Svensson at Apotea thought this was a great idea, so we decided this was our next step. Apotea could buy all the items needed for these medical backpacks, and they would also encourage their employees in their headquarters to help assemble each backpack. And then in March, they were visited by the Ukrainian ambassador to Stockholm, who said he was very thankful for this help, and he even participated in assembling some of these backpacks, and he has come back to help doing that more times again. The content of each backpack costs around $2,000 wholesale price. So it's a lot of money. Sebastian Snackstedt said that he could finance the first 150, and we aimed high and thought that, God willing, we could send 500 backpacks within a year. And Apotea said they would raise the funds for the remaining 350. In April this year, Sebastian, it's on the right side here, and I, and you see Rudy here in the red t-shirt, went to Ukraine with one of those shipments. And now in the first week of May, backpack number 500 left Stockholm for Ukraine. So we reached the goal faster than we had planned, and Apotea says that now we are aiming for the next 200. Quite fantastic. And the feedback we get from the military doctors in Ukraine is that the content is extremely valuable to them, so they are very grateful. And here you see in the back of the truck with the backpacks on its way to the eastern part of Ukraine. And this is from the first shipment that were packed in London. They have black backpacks from soldiers who have received them, and we have been allowed to use and publish this picture. Do we reach out, or do they reach out? I do believe they do. And as I said before, they have a very good strategy for assuring that every shipment reaches its destination. And every month we get reports like this. You can see how many shipments they did in March of 2024, where they went, churches, army, charity funds, NGOs, medical institutions, and others. And we get pictures of people who have received, places where they have received different types of shipments. So we do believe they reach out. We also got a very unexpected help from the Swedish television. They have reporter in Ukraine, and last fall he had two videos of a Ukrainian Christian girl who was studying medicine in Canada, SEMA. And when the war started, she quit and went back to Ukraine to help. And now she's running a mobile clinic in the war zone. And the Swedish reporter made a video with her in August, and then in October. And in October, she said, this is just a screenshot from the video, where she says that we have received quite a few donations by Swedes, so I want to thank them. And this is, of course, Apothea's drugs. And I think we couldn't get better proof to show our supporters that what they donate really reaches all the way out, even to the war zone. The same reporter a couple of months ago had a video with Sebastian, where they showed where he got to explain what he was doing in Ukraine and why he was doing it. And he had a very strong Christian testimony, and you can imagine this reached the Swedish nation through the national television on the best, say, sending hours in on the Swedish news. So that was fantastic. Now, this highly unlikely cooperation between two Christian medical associations that don't have any money. One pharmacy who wants to send drugs, but who aren't allowed to by the authorities. And one former criminal rap artist who is good at who knows how to use social media. And transport company, all mediated by a Christian plumber who read his local newspaper and acted on what he read. And this is so unlikely that it can only be a miracle of God. And it's still continuing. Sebastian meets a lot of young people in Sweden with problems, and he says that what people in Sweden need today is hope. Rudy says that people in Ukraine need hope, and he also says that those shipments from all over the world gives hope to people in Ukraine, because it shows them that someone cares about their situation. But Rudy also says that the gospel is so fantastic in the Ukrainian setting today, where there's so little hope. because the gospel also tells people that they are loved by God and they are immensely valuable in His sight. And this is the very opposite to the Russian atheist view that people have been brought up where the individual is of no value. And therefore, the Ukrainian brothers and sisters, then they convey the gospel together with the medicine that they are sending out. And they do see that God works miracles even in the midst of many seemingly hopeless situations. So today in Ukraine, the gospel can really be received as the good news. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Lars, for sharing that. And we were particularly wanting you just to tell the story, which you've done, and starting further back than we anticipated, but showing the way that God led you initially to Himself when you were overseas in Pensacola, and then put international mission upon your heart, and then opened doors in His time and in ways that you really hadn't anticipated at all. And I was particularly struck by the way that God prepared you for this war that, of course, He knew was coming, through the friendships that you developed between Sweden and the Ukraine CMA, going out there on trips to train medical students, learning something of the country, and then all of a sudden, He had put everything in place for this crisis and to put you into a position where you could help. And amazing that, as you say, two Christian medical associations with no money, ALM and CMAU, and how God just linked you up and found people for you. Mm. And I was struck in your description about the obstacles you met along the way that seemed insuperable, like the fact that the Swedish government wouldn't let any drugs leave the country, like the fact you didn't have any money, and so on. And I just wanted to ask you about your reflections. What did God teach you through this experience about obstacles when we encounter obstacles in trying to serve Him? What did you learn through that?
Well, it's easy to answer that now that I see the answers. But when we were in the midst of it, we were just I think so enthusiastic, Magnus and I, that we were simply doing whatever we could, and asking God to bless our loaves and fishes and do something out of it. But how it all turned out, we could never have imagined. We could never imagine. And I think, as far as I know, I don't know Svärdson and his background. He was some years ago. He was awarded, the entrepreneur of the year in Sweden. So he's a well-known person, but that he would so rapidly say yes to us, that was maybe my biggest surprise, and that he has continued, because I think that what we have done has shown that that what we do, that he can rely on what we're doing, and even though this is not the answer to your question really, but that has been that has amazed me the most, that God can solve a problem and using people that you wouldn't really expect to be there to help you. So
there must have been some, the way you tell your story, there are certainly some obstacles that you met early on, and then it just seems to be door after door opened. Were there any really low points for you along the way where you just wondered, what are we going to do? And how did God get you through those points?
I can't say there were any low points. It all happened so fast. Um, I am amazed afterwards that I got COVID, because when we had COVID in our hospital, we had so many patients, and so we had a real overload or work overload, and it would have been impossible for me to take all the time. I mean, I spent from 8 in the morning till 6 in the evening on email or phone for several days. It would have been completely impossible if I was still at work.
Yes.
So that was so fantastic. So, but I never ran low. I was running on adrenaline, I think, and much enthusiasm still, and everything fell into place so rapidly.
Yes.
So I never had time to get low.
Yeah. Now, tell me, the CEO of Apatia, you didn't say, was he a man of faith? And
not that we know, not that we know, but he is very eager to help. So Apatia, they are involved in many other projects in the world, which I think is fantastic. And he's a visionary person, obviously, and just that he can engage the staff in their headquarters in Stockholm to stand there in line and pack these backpacks. Yes. It tells you something. And he's not in a big silk suit, he has an ordinary shirt and jeans on, and he's always among people working directly with his employees, which I think is a great success factor for success.
Do you know anything of his own personal story about what has given him this passion to serve and situations?
No, I haven't. I haven't been on. I haven't talked to him so much in private. So once when I called him on the phone, he said, "Oh, now I'm sorry. I'm right now. I'm in the United States for 2 weeks business trip here, traveling around the States." And he was traveling with the Swedish Prince Daniel, the royal prince. And he said, and I've been telling him about what we're doing in Ukraine, and he says it's fantastic. So somehow he is driven by desire to do good to people. But what is his inner motivation? I don't really know. He knows, of course, that we are obviously that we are Christian, but I will ask him in due time.
Well, it's reminiscent, isn't it, of the people that God uses in biblical times. Think of Cyrus or Artaxerxes, and not believers, but God used them at strategic points to do the work that he had planned. It's wonderful to see this partnership between Christian believers and commercial companies, who have a vision.
Yeah.
Each of you bringing a different piece of the jigsaw to make it all happen.
Yeah, right. I do believe that many people in Sweden, they have a background where maybe their parents or grandparents were Christians, and they have a good experience of Christian people and what Christians do. So I wouldn't be surprised if he has something in his background that he falls back on to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And of course, you talked about Sebastian as well. I first met Sebastian on a Zoom call that I'm sure you were on as well with Rudy and the team some months ago. And we had met this Ukrainian doctor, also not a believer, but with a real heart for her country, working in London. She was an anesthetist, and she was the one who designed the original backpacks, and she put together just half a dozen of them in her own spare room with her own money and had sent those out. And we heard about them and said that, can we help you? And it was on that call that we met Sebastian. I didn't really know who he was, but this guy was phoning me over the next week. He rang several times and I was very busy. And I thought, who is this guy called Seb ringing me from overseas who I don't know, you know? So anyway, eventually my wife said, look, you should answer the phone and talk to him. So I picked up the phone and he said, is that Dr. Saunders? I said, yes. He said, I've never found it so hard in my whole life to give away $75,000 to anybody. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we like these backpacks and we'd like to give you $75,000 to make them up. And then he added another 75. So we had the 150,000. We could make up 120 of these packs in Oxford, and Magnus, as you've said, came over and helped with that whole process. And those went. And then of course, the whole thing moved into a new dimension when Apatia got involved and said, look, we'll help you finance another, 350 and now another 200. And it's really quite extraordinary. As you say, you invest what little you have and God works a miracle to make it all happen, Did you know Sebastian before this episode, or it was just God brought you together at the moment?
No, I didn't know him. I just knew him through the media, because he has undergone a real radical conversion. It's like something like a St. Paul conversion, from
Damascus Road.
Yeah, from being a very hateful person with a very dark view of life to what he is now. It's really transformation from something that he can't even understand himself, that he's doing what he's doing now. But I met him several times, and I think he's fantastic. He takes very rapid decisions, but it's always good decisions, even when it's about a lot of money. I've never experienced anything that he did anything that was really bad. He has a good judgment, and he understands what needs to be done.
Yes,
he's really a visionary person and a doer. Something happens.
Yeah,
and if you have 100,000 followers on Facebook, and you say that, can you spare like $10 for this work in Ukraine? Then you've got $1 million. So he's fantastic at raising money.
So now you said the Swedish Medical Association quite miraculously turned a blind eye to you and said, we're not going to stop you. No. Just go ahead. How have they reacted as time has gone on? They've seen you sending more and more drugs out there.
They haven't said anything. And I have many things discussed with both our board and with Per Svärdson. I mean, should we go back to them and because we didn't plan for this to continue for so long, but everyone says that, well, just leave it at where it is and be happy. So we say in Swedish, you shouldn't awake the bear that is sleeping. So if they don't ask us, we don't talk so much to them. And today we don't send so much drugs because we talked to Rudy, and he says that we can concentrate on the backpacks, because today they are receiving so much drugs from other parts of the world. So if we can continue with these, because they are so appreciated among the military, they says that then continue to do that.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, how do you see the campaign going from this point on? You've been involved for over 2 years now. since you first sent the first truck out
Yeah.
there. It's still in full swing, it seems. How do you see the future panning out in terms of your own involvement?
Yeah, well, I think that we as the Christian Medical Association, um, we we are seeking other ways to help out in Ukraine, and one would be to go with a group of doctors for medical outreaches to places where they have no functioning medical care. You can go to a smaller community and to a church, and you can invite people to come for a free consultation. Um, there have been some American groups doing that, and really says it's very much appreciated. So that's one way. And what I did when I was there in April, I went to, I visited 4 hospitals, 3 universities, 2 churches, and at the university, we had seminars about sepsis, which is my main area of interest. And that attracted quite a few students. So between 50 and 100 medical students would come and listen. And each time the CMAU, they would present what they are doing. They have many short courses. They have, for example, courses on how to use portable ultrasound. And these courses are very attractive to students, and they are free. And that way they get in contact with medical students in Ukraine, and well, and they can build further on that. So having seminars for medical students in the universities, that can be a good joint venture. That's one way that we are exploring also, and we hope to do this together with the other Christian medical associations in Denmark and Norway and Finland.
Yeah. Yes, I know other Scandinavians have been involved in the project as well, raising money also to employ people in the warehouse that Rudy is running in Lviv.
Yeah.
Now, you said very early on in your talk how the Swedish Medical Association said, just make sure the drugs you send out are really needed. And we've got a question here from Christian Stikov, Bulgaria, who's saying, thank you for sharing this amazing testimony. Would you please share how you prioritized which drugs or medical equipment to send and to which regions? How did you make those decisions?
Well, Rudy would send us a list with A, B, and C drugs. So the A drugs were the highest priority.
Yeah.
And then I said, not only which drugs, but tell us which quantities. And say that we had $200,000 to spend. Then we would look at what would be the costs, what are the reasonable quantities we can get hold of, and especially in relationship to what they wanted, and then we would just try to get as much as possible out of the money that we had. And Apotea helped us a lot. And today there are many generic drugs that are a lot cheaper than the originals, and many times we couldn't get hold of enough of the cheaper generic drugs. So we had to, for each drug, decide how much money can we spend on that, and which quantities can we get, so that we would altogether get a good mix.
Yeah.
I also have a Christian brother he's an anesthesiologist, and he helped me to prioritize, because early on it was a lot of drugs for intensive care.
Yeah.
But we tried to do the best with what we had and what we could get hold of in relation to the quantities they wanted.
Yes. No, that's
And
good.
not all drugs. Not all drugs.
You go ahead.
Not all drugs they asked for were available in Sweden. Some of them we simply don't have, we don't use, so we can.
Okay. Yes, I know the Ukrainian Ministry of Health were very helpful in terms of saying, here are the priorities. And Rudy and his team have been really very intentional and wise in the way they have prioritized things. And the very, very little of what's been sent has gone to waste, because virtually all that has been sent has been useful in that context.
Yeah. But it changed very much along the road. It has changed very much from the beginning. It was a lot of, beta blockers, thyroid hormones, and so forth, and then more intensive care drugs, intravenous antibiotics, and so it has changed over time.
Yeah, great. Well, sadly, we've run out of time, Lars, but thank you so much for coming and just sharing the story of God's amazing provision. And as you say, the way he uses ordinary people who say, "Here am I, send me," and links people up with all their different skills and resources, and does something absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for your example and your humility and insight, and just being available to God through this, along with the friends that he drew together. It's been a real inspiration, and I'm sure I feel greatly inspired. I'm sure many listening do too as well. And thank you for everybody for coming along and joining us today. And we hope to see you again soon on ICMDA webinars. May the Lord bless you.